morning, Professor. My name is Rodney and I will be doing my presentation on interpersonal communication plan. Now, to get this information passed, I'll be using the lecture method along with my PowerPoint presentation, and I'll be going in this order. First, I'll talk about interpersonal communication. Basically, what is communication? Then, from that point, I'll move into talking about my behavioral blend and what a behavioral blend is, and how those different influencers in my life help define my behavioral blend. I'll talk about a communication barrier, what a communication barrier is, and my own personal communication barriers, things that hinder me from being a great communicator. Then I'll go into my goals, what it is that I want to be in the end. When I look down the road in communicating and being a communicator, what is it that I want? Then I'll talk about my strategies that I'm going to use in order to get to this point of my goal. Then we'll go into a little bit about my plan. How am I going to put those strategies in place with that plan devised to get to that point that I want to be? And then I'll go into the conclusion and put all this together. And so without further ado, what is communication? Well, we'll see what Webster says. Communication is a process by which information is exchanged between individuals through a common system of symbols, signs, or behavior. That's what Webster says communication is. Basically, two people with understanding of a language or signs and symbols coming together talking, or two or three people, and being able to exchange information. That is communication. Interpersonal communication is when you have two people that can come together and maximize the personal moment between both of them to get information between the two of them. That is interpersonal communication. Two people talking the same language, maximizing their information that they're trying to talk to each other about and to get an understanding. However, we know that doesn't happen. Two people can talk for 30 minutes and see different things or not hear what the other person has to say. And we'll talk a little bit, talk about some of the problems or some of the reasons that can happen. But first, before we go into that, we'll talk a little bit about my background and how my background influences my behavioral blend and influences my communication. I'm a Christian. I've always been a Christian. I remember going to church as a small child, to now going to church with my family every Sunday. But not lately, we've been watching it on the computer because of the pandemic. We have not yet went back to church, but eventually we will. African-American male, as you can see, there's no denying that. I was born in New Jersey, and I'm everything Jersey. Jersey team, Jersey food, everything. I'm proud of being from the great state of New Jersey. I was born to a two-parent household, lived in the same house from birth all the way through graduation from high school. And after graduation from high school, 3 months later, I was off into my next adventure. I'm a husband. I have 5 children. I have a daughter that lives in Virginia, a son that's in the Marine Corps stationed at Southern California, and I have a son in the Marine Corps stationed here in South Carolina. And we have 2 more girls still left at home. We have 2 grandchildren, 2 granddaughters to be exact, and a grandson on the way. And we're really happy about that, our first grandson. We're really excited. I'm a graduate of American Military University, and since I've retired, the last 6 years I've been teaching in a high school system, trying to learn how to mold young minds, and this class is going to help me learn even better methods in order to get through to those students. Now, moving right along, behavioral blends. You can see this particular symbol has 4 quadrants, and each of these quadrants has descriptors of a person's personality. DISC, and under each descriptor are these different characteristics of that person. The personality test determines which of these characteristics are more dominant in your personality. And those things are normally determined by your background and what you've experienced. And as you can see, some of those different ones, I won't read them all to you, but you can kind of see what they are. Now, my specific personal behavioral blend to me was CSD. That was predominantly my personality traits came from that CS and D quadrant. And I tended to be more kind, nice, strong, delightful, pleasant. Those are some of the things I tended to be. And if you can look on the chart, you'll see things I tend not to be, or less of: outgoing, active, playful, fun, loving. And as I look at this, I see how my background helped determine some of these different behavioral blends. And some of those things I sensed, even before I did this personality test, I was trying to change, because going from the military and being a Marine and a leader, and this is how it is, to going into the classroom and influencing 15 to 18-year-olds is totally different. So I've been intentionally trying to change maybe some of those actions that I have to maybe become a better communicator. And this is one of the ways I'm trying to change and become better. Now, some communication influences for me were positive ones were kind, nice, considerate, thoughtful. You know, some of my negative influences were too forceful, too strong-willed, friendly, cordial, popular. So some of those were negative about me. So now I can, you know, are all these perfectly right? No. But are many of them right? Yes. So those that I know that are right, and not only from what I think, I've spoken with my wife and people that know me, and I've asked them, do they see these things? And some of them hit it right on the head. And from the ones that many of them said no, and I kind of agree. I know that they don't apply to me, but however, for the whole, most of it is done. They've done a great job with that. Now, communication barriers are some of the things that stops effective communication. So something that nullifies or stops effective communication between two people is a barrier. Something that gets in the way of something. Just like if you're driving in traffic and they have a barrier, that means it's blocking something from you going on your way, so you have to change a lane or something like that. That's what like a communication barrier is, a barrier of language, of actions for you to understand that other person. That could be a mental thing or it could be a physical thing. It could be that body language, it could be that barrier from effectively communicating. My own personal communication barriers, there's several. Peterson had described them in his book when he talked about the Perry Mason, where I asked that question, knowing the answer already, but it's a sarcastic question, and that sometimes could, bring out defensiveness in a person. So knowing what I already know, when I answer the question, I would ask those questions. And, it's a couple more. The why, the ritual listening, especially coming from where I'm acting like I'm listening, but I've already got something in my mind that I want to say, and that's really something I really have to think about when dealing with kids, because some of their problems are exactly the same, so I will not tend to listen, but I'll be ready to jump in with my argument on what they should do, what's wrong, what's right. But now I have to definitely learn how to be more of a ritual listener. And my goals is to be an intentional, attentive listener. An intentional, attentive listener. So when someone is talking to me, my goal is to be intentional and definitely listen. And with doing that, it'll make me a better teacher. It'll make me a better father. It'll make me a better neighbor. I think it'll make me a better friend all around. These two things, intentional and attentive listening. So what are my strategies for reaching this goal? What am I going to do to get there? I'm going to, think about what I hear and stop being the Perry Mason and understand what I'm about to say, how it's going to affect that person. And ritual listening, I'm going to listen to the person and think about that person's feelings and what it is they're hearing when I'm saying what I have to say. Some of the other strategies I'm going to use, I'm going to eliminate distractions when I'm talking with somebody, because sometimes I can be a multitasker. I'm going to stop that. I'm not going to be a passive listener. I'm not going to be a passive listener. I'm going to utilize that talker-listener card as well. That is a great tool that I will definitely get use of. I will definitely laminate that card and use that to keep me mindful when I'm communicating with someone, especially my students. But one quote that I saw that reminded me and kind of put this all together for me to help me was, there is one rule for being a good talker: learn to listen. One rule for being a good talker, and that's learn to listen. I really believe that if you can listen and hear it attentively and intentionally think about what you're going to say, it can make you a better communicator to those people, whether it be your family, your profession, or whatever it may be. And there was one other quote that I'm always thinking about, and which made me think with this course was Bill Parcells, former New York Giants football coach and several other NFL teams, but Super Bowl winning football coach for the Giants, said, if you're not trying to get better, you're getting worse. So I think this course is helping me get better so I don't get worse. Thank you.